That awkward moment when Nick realizes his last Spider-Man retrospective was made over half a year ago.
Today we'll be taking a look at 3 games. Kinda. More like 2.5. Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man 3, and Web of Shadows. Though before we move on to those, I gotta make it clear that I can't review every single port of every Spider-Man game, guys. I'm not saying that to make anyone feel bad like you've been impatient or nothing. You guys have waited long enough for this. But have you seen just how many ports there are of Spider-Man 2? I'm finding new ones all the time. Just look at this version made for the PSP. I wasn't even sure what I was looking at first because, well, look at it! It's just like the game based on the first movie. I mean, not that this is any more offensive than Enter Electro being so much like the previous game. That's common when it comes to sequels. But this, it feels like some crappy expansion pack, not its own thing. Most of the levels I've seen are just retools of cityscapes from the previous game, and you see so many of the same buildings just copied and pasted everywhere. They do some little bitty things here and there to try mixing it up, but these touches are superficial. They're really just an afterthought. Aside from cutscenes and a few new character models, just about every asset is reused from the previous game, or taken from the other ports of Spider-Man 2, though mostly the former. The sound effects and music sure take me back. If you like the first game, this is worth taking a look at, but I wouldn't recommend actually playing it. It's an interesting peek at what a full-blown Spider-Man 2 could have been like if the gameplay hadn't changed and it was made with the gameplay style of the previous 3 games. Just imagine a more platforming-focused sort of Spidey game with the better graphics and whatnot of Spider-Man 2's console ports. I don't know, it's just intriguing to me. That said, I'll always choose the console Spider-Man 2 over this direct. The swinging is less thrilling, the combat is clunkier. Overall, the gameplay is just dull as can be, and it really doesn't have anything going for it aside from the pure nostalgia of it that makes you feel like you stepped into the Twilight Zone. Honestly, I'm pretty sad that this gameplay style had to die this way, following 3 solid other games. At the very least, I can give it props for featuring some good dialogue for Spidey.
This is fitting vengeance for my poor Rosie.
Sorry, my sympathy meter is totally out.
Miserable creature.
Your parents never hugged you, did they?
You see the futility of your situation.
Clever. Let me write that down.
And hey, now I finally know where this tune came from. Wait a minute. I just reviewed another port of Spider-Man 2. So, moving on to Spider-Man 3 for the PS2. This game sucks. It's a downport of another licensed game on a more powerful console, and that should tell you everything you need to know. But I'm gonna tell you more about it anyway. See, when consoles like the PS3 were new, not everyone could shell out over half a K for such a thing, and kudos to Sony for supporting the PS2 for as long as they did with new games. Heck, they only stopped producing PS2 units like sometime after I uploaded my last Spider-Man video, I think. Unfortunately, most of the downports of games that were also released on next-gen consoles sucked. Sure, a lot of them were functional and played alright, but there was just no passion, no spark, nothing to really make them interesting. A game that was kinda meh on the PS3 would be sleep-inducing on the PS2. So while people could continue buying new games for their tried-and-true console, they were better off just saving for the PS3. 'Cause most of these games weren't worth playing. There are a few exceptions though. For example, while I hate the level design philosophies and whatnot of the daytime stages in Sonic Unleashed, I only ever played the next-gen version. I don't think the last-gen version on the PS2 and Wii is anything special, but at least the level design is kind of interesting, if a little stunted. So anyway, what about Spider-Man 3? It's weird. The fighting mechanics don't really pack any punch, so to speak, and it feels like you're crushing graham crackers, which would probably be more fun. While the fighting mechanics are, at worst, underwhelming, the swinging mechanics barely work. Oops, I mean they don't. Oh hey! A Go Through the Rings mission! Yay! Always a hallmark of only the finest games, am I right? Like this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Wait, this is a good game! Wanna know what the best part of this game is? The cutscenes, haphazardly downported from the PS3 version. It's so disillusioning to watch them. This game doesn't even feel finished most of the time. Textures are sloppy and everything just feels kinda dead. I mean, just look at how empty and desolate this place is. There's a somewhat interesting mechanic that, like, changes the world around you as you progress and your surroundings are affected by how heroic you are or aren't, and you know what, I'm probably just talking out of my ass. All I'm saying is by the time this game was almost over, New York was starting to look like a post-apocalyptic dump. And if it's because I did a sucky job, well, I just don't care. The people making this game clearly didn't care much. It hardly stacks up against Spider-Man 2. So, yeah. Next game, please.
I am so sick of you mouth-breathing knuckle-draggers. You wouldn't know power if it kicked you in the ass, and you sure as hell wouldn't know what to do with it if you got it. But hey, you think you're tough guys? In that case, show me what you got.
So how is Spider-Man 3 proper on a next-gen console? It's better. Okay, look, it's more functional, you know? It works. So at least it has that going for it over the crappy downport. But it's just not that fun. Let me put it this way. My little brother isn't the biggest gamer, you know? He played a lot as a kid, but just kind of outgrew them while I didn't. Anyway, he was able to sit through most of Spider-Man 3 on the PS2. Like I said, he's not that much of a gamer, but he's pretty forgiving when it comes to games, you know? It takes a lot to piss him off. He has a surprisingly high tolerance for bullshit and stopped playing this after, like, half an hour. Yeah. In all honesty, it's fine, really, but it's just too bloated for its own good. It's that try-hard sort of game where they really want to show off the horsepower of this console and make this game feel so much more epic than the downport version. Oh, I see what you did there, Activision. Supporting older consoles, nice. Anyway, the game world is huge, which sounds great for a Spider-Man game, but, well, it's kind of tricky to put into words. The game world doesn't feel huge because there's a lot of content in it, it just feels sort of stretched out. It's a whole lot of nothing, that's what. Swinging just doesn't feel that great because Spidey and his controls don't fit the sheer scale of the environment. The buildings and the spaces between them are just so vast that each swing doesn't carry you very far at all, and it's just really off-putting. In Spider-Man 2, everything was just the right size for swinging around to feel as liberating as it should. But here, Spidey just feels so small. It takes forever to get anywhere. You really do feel like a bug. By the way, the combat isn't much more satisfying in this game either. There just isn't much that draws me into this game. It's fine, really. Play it if you want. If you like it, that's fine. Like I said, it's a perfectly functional, playable game. And if that's all you need, well, okay then. I just can't be sucked into a world that feels so empty.
Oh no! Oh, but hey, look at this. We haven't drowned. That's awesome, isn't it?
Now this is a game! Okay, so what is a Spider-Man game about? Fighting and swinging. That's it. First, let's talk about the combat, which really is a huge focus of this game, for better or worse. Okay, so there's a lot of punching, kicking, slicing, chomping, munching, and honestly, it's a bit excessive. Many would say that there's too much combat, with enemies just littered everywhere. Some would say the fights are too drawn out, with many a long health bar you'll be whittling away at with any number of crazy combos. I admit, the focus on the combat is a bit much, but I really don't mind, because it's so darn fun. Part of the fun of Spider-Man games is beating up bad guys with Spidey's special flair, watching him dance around, making a spectacle out of what could be a typical slugfest. And I don't think any game has captured that quite like this one. The versatility of the fighting mechanics is what really sells them for me. Normal Spidey and Symbiote Spidey each have their own set of moves and their own fighting styles. I like to mix things up with a healthy amount of both, frequently switching between the two. I'll play as normal Spider-Man for a bit, and then switch to Symbiote Spider-Man and back again. Even during fights I'll do this to see what new combos I can pull off. I call it mixed martial butt kicking. Of course, there's this sequence, and this sequence, and this sequence. Really though, aside from a few instances like that, the combat never got too repetitive or stale for me. I just kept finding new ways to beat guys up and found the fighting mechanics reasonably fluid and much more satisfying than any of the other games we've talked about today. I mean, part of the fun of Spider-Man is simply seeing how he fights, and I think it's great that they tried so hard to capture that in this game. Now let's talk about the swinging. Okay, so the other and arguably more important half of the game feels just right this time. The game world is still utterly massive, but now Spider-Man fits right in. The swinging feels so much better than in Spider-Man 3. You're fast, you're mobile, you're smooth, you can go anywhere you want with amazing ease. While the city has been scaled up, Spider-Man has been made more powerful and graceful to match it. You see, this is what I think they were going for, but more or less failed to pull off with Spider-Man 3, which made me feel underpowered. Spidey is so easy to control and just so dang strong in this game that you feel much more liberated than in previous games. But with the sheer enormity of the cityscape and the oodles and oodles of enemies that there are, you don't really feel overpowered either. While you're no longer able to climb up your own webs like you were in Ultimate Spider-Man, there is another new ability that I find very useful. If you're in an enclosed sort of area, like an alleyway, and you need a quick way to get out of there, you can yank yourself straight up. As long as you're close enough to buildings on either side, you can keep doing this to ascend again and again and again. It's extremely useful. As convenient as it is, though, it's not overpowered. Each time you do it, it only carries you so high up, and doing it repeatedly gets tedious. So as great an ability as it is, it's not something players are just going to spam all the time. So it's in balance with everything else. Just a really smart, intuitive new ability to add to the rest. And believe me, it's just one of many cool, crazy moves you can pull off. You can run along the walls, you can slide down the walls, you can yank yourself through the air and dive, you can zip over to enemies, you can do all sorts of crazy things, and I just love it. Now for one of my favorite aspects of this game, the spider tokens.
Oh my god, there's so many on this building.
There are thousands to collect, and they're everywhere. You can spend hours just leisurely hopping from rooftop to rooftop nabbing these, always with another one in sight. It kinda made the whole thing feel like one giant platformy collectathon at times, which not everyone is gonna be into. But I just get so wrapped up in this that I often completely forget about the... what's that? Oh right, the story! It's okay. Kinda dumb, but it's alright. When or where this takes place is pretty confusing. I assume it's in the universe of the comics since it contains many elements from them, but stylistically there's just something off, but whatever. Basically, Venom starts reproducing and soon symbiotes are everywhere. Spidey is the first victim of this plague. He suddenly has a new symbiote suit and has to fight his inner demons again while driving back countless other symbiotes as they sweep through the city. The escalating conflict is pretty fun to watch unfolding around you, and the writing's okay. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. I think some of the writing is really good.
So, what are your thoughts on the new duds?
Is some kind of damn superhero fashion show? 'Cause I got some orange and brown tights that put you to shame.
What, not a fan of the new me?
First off, you smell like death.
Ooh.
Second, you look like one of those emo kitties they got all over the internet gibbering on about how hard their life is when they've never even known true pain.
And some of it is just awful. Some of the worst elements of it are centered around this super contrived morality system. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Throughout the story, there are many turning points where you can choose whether to do the right or wrong thing. In theory. Some of the consequences for your actions are just weird. And the whole mechanic, while interesting on paper, is insultingly simple-minded in its execution. As you guys know, I like Black Cat. I think she's cool, and I get it that her affection of Spider-Man is kind of twisted, but whatever, it's interesting, it's fun, Anyway, there's this really forced conflict between whether he hangs out with her or Mary Jane, and they make you feel really bad for choosing Black Cat. Like, they don't just make you feel like a jerk, they make you feel like it would be truly evil for Peter to choose anyone in the world to be with other than Mary Jane. Of course, it would be nice if they try to give me some reason to be interested in what happens to Mary Jane, aside from Mary Jane is Mary Jane is Mary Jane. But whatever. Look, I get it. Peter Parker and Mary Jane are supposed to be together. That's what keeps the Marvel Universe in balance, apparently, and anything else would be just wrong. But I'm not Peter. And if this is going to pretend to give me choices outside the bounds of the comics, I'd appreciate it if they didn't try to make me look like the biggest douchebag in the world. And if it's a matter of staying true to Peter's character or whatever, if they could just give Peter the capacity to go a little out of his comfort zone without completely turning to the dark side, this system would be alright. But there is no gray area. People say Marvel superheroes tend to be more relatable than DC superheroes because they feel a little more like real people with realistic inner conflicts that amount to more than just one side or the other of this comfortingly archaic, black and white, pure good versus total unadulterated evil kindergartner stuff. I personally don't quite see it that way, and I really like a lot of DC superheroes as well, but I can understand where people who want to make that point are coming from. That said, does this presumed philosophy apply to this game? Give me a break. This is as black and red as it gets, literally. Maybe I want to hang out with Black Cat. Did you ever think about that game? Of course not, you're a game. I'm not asking for Mass Effect, guys, but this whole morality system has the emotional depth of answering a true or false question. It's just a really weak sauce element that's insulting at times and makes us otherwise competent plot's lowest lows stand out. I was just using Black Cat as an example. There are a lot of weird things going on here. Like this! What the hell is this?
The whole world's gone nuts.
As for the art direction, we see lots of characters from the Marvel Universe step in and help out, and their character designs are just bonkers. In most cases, I really like how over the top they are, but some are just hard to look at. The graphics are beautiful, and I love how the lighting and glimpses of goo can be so effective in crafting the game's atmosphere. The voice acting is alright for most of the characters. I won't waste time ranting about Peter's voice. I'll just let you decide how bad it is.
MJ, I was so worried. Damn it.
The music is alright, feeling like a mix of past Spider-Man game music. Some tunes are more orchestra heavy, some sound like something out of a generic blockbuster action flick, some sound like something Kevin Manthey would compose. It's alright. So anyway, while I may have my gripes with Web of Shadows, I think it's a really underrated game. You know how some people say things like, Sonic stopped being good after Sonic 3, but that isn't true. Yeah, people also say, Spider-Man stopped being good after Spider-Man 2. Kind of sweeping Ultimate Spider-Man under the rug and giving this game a pass like it's an afterthought, having given up altogether after Spider-Man 3, which is such a shame, because this game's alright. It's not perfect, but they tried a lot of new things here. They played around with Spider-Man 2's formula and made something pretty cool. Sure, I may have some issues with the game's story, but the gameplay has not only been refined, but evolved. Playing as this Spider-Man, who's more tactile than ever and a hell of a fighter, in a huge world that doesn't hinder him in the slightest, was pretty refreshing for me. So yeah, good game. But with all this talk about its crazy new mechanics and fleshed out game world and all that, would I say that it's the best so far? One might think so, given how refined and expansive it is, but no, not quite. I may as well mention that it's kind of a glitchy game, and while I didn't run into glitches often, they were pretty big ones. Once I was just fighting some enemies, more enemies appeared, some enemies disappeared, more enemies appeared, I lost track of who I was fighting, and before you know it, the whole game world just seemed to disappear around me and I died. My last save point didn't help, and I respawned in a black hole, or what may as well have been one. I was trapped in a seemingly dead game. I reset the game and loaded my most recent autosave, which was a little while before the glitch fest or my last manual save, and everything was fine. Still, when things get this out of control, that's not a good sign. And it's weird, but problems like this just seem to plague 7th gen consoles more than 6th gen ones. Or is it just me? Even then though, that and the occasional QuickTime event isn't enough to sink this game for me. I still think it's a great game, with wild, refreshing, versatile gameplay. However, I still think Ultimate Spider-Man is better. Sure, that game was more simple, it was shorter, and the mechanics weren't as squishy, but everything it did right, it did pretty much perfectly. It's just the most pure Spider-Man experience I can think of. I'll give credit where it's due. Web of Shadows has a lot of cool things going for it, but Ultimate Spider-Man, while more rough around the edges, is rock solid, and I have yet to see it beaten, even by a game as bold as this one. It's kinda sad, but like the previous gameplay style from the Spider-Man games of old, the whole Spidey 2 gameplay just sorta died after Web of Shadows. The guys at Activision just sorta gave up after this game was received as a mixed bag. People were getting tired of games like this, and it would be a long time before we'd see anything even remotely like it again. Heck, we still haven't really. Next time though, we'll end the retrospective with a supposed return to form, with the amazing Spider-Man for the PS3. And no, true believers, you will not have to wait nearly this long for that. And to top things off, we wrapped up this one just in time for Sonic Lost World.